Wheel of Time Season 2, Episode 5 is called Damane, which is one of over 40 new terms and names that were introduced in this action-packed and lore-filled episode. Let's unravel the episode to see if we can make sense of it all. This is Unraveling the Pattern. I'm Lauren. This video is safe for show watchers and non-book readers, but please check the description for a detailed spoiler warning. Let's talk about the Seanchan first. The cold open reveals more about these strange invaders from the west. They have odd ships with three-eyed creature statues and red sails that are ribbed for no one's pleasure. Their banners show a golden hawk in flight on a blue background. The hawk is clutching 3 lightning bolts in its claws. The Seanchan have overtaken the port city of Falme, which is at the very tip of the peninsula called Toman Head, in the very westernmost part of the Westlands continent. They claim they've returned to their ancient homeland. Back in episode 3, they said the people on this continent were squatting on stolen land that once belonged to them. They mentioned the name of a man called Luthair Pendrag, whose fleet of ships were sent across the Arith Ocean at some point in the past. Those people were promised that one day they would return to reclaim their land. The Elayne, or the Return, is led by Royal Commander High Lord Turok, who is the highest-ranking Seanchan noble in Falme. But he's not the highest-ranking Seanchan. Later, Turok claims that Ishamael was the one who saw the omens or signs that led them to begin the return in the first place. But Ishamael gives the credit of reading the omens to an empress in her court of the 9 moons. Even High Lord Turok answers to the empress, "May she live forever." This is a phrase that all Seanchans say in the books after mentioning the empress, "May she live forever." Unfortunately, this line was not in the show, but I'm sure we'll hear it eventually. The Seanchan nobles are said to be of the blood with a capital B. Twice in this episode, Ishamael was told that he is not of the blood. All Seanchan nobles shave their heads in different ways and grow out and lacquer certain fingernails as a way to indicate rank. High Lord Turok shaves his entire head, including even his eyebrows, to indicate his high rank as part of the imperial family. High Lady Suroth keeps the sides of her head shaved, but she leaves a long crest of hair running along the top and down the back of her head. Notice how each of these nobles has shorter nails and different parts of their head shaved? The most despicable thing about the Seanchan is the Empire's use of slaves. Though it was not said out loud in this episode, there was a caption that said someone called a Dakovail spoke to Ishamael. Dakovail is translated from the Old Tongue to mean those who are property. All Seanchan slaves are Dakovail, and the very lowest among them are the Damane. This episode is called Damane, even though the term is used only once, near the end of the episode, when Egwene is brought before High Lord Turok as a gift from Suroth and Ishamael, and then she is collared and leashed by someone called a Suldam. At one point, High Lady Suroth does say all Marath Damane will be leashed. The term Marath Damane simply means those who must be leashed in the Old Tongue. The Seanchan believe that all women who can channel the One Power, including the Aes Sedai like Liandrin, should be leashed and controlled by a Suldam. Damane means leashed ones. I've mentioned this before, but there is a clear One Power connection or link between the Suldam bracelets and the Damane collar. You can see this connection in episode 2 and again in this episode when Egwene is collared. And while some of the Damane seem very obedient, and even like they might enjoy following orders like this Damane in episode 3, this image of the same Damane is such a heart-wrenching example of the truth. She's so young, and she has this look of sadness while also seeming so callous, it feels like she's got a 1,000-yard stare. The Seanchan treat the Damane like strange pets. Notice how their hair is braided, as if they're groomed by their masters. Even when Egwene was brought before Turok, her hair had already been braided. Poor Egwene, she's now been captured and had her body violated by White Cloaks and Seanchan. And as we know, the hair of the women in the 2 rivers is sort of sacred, and braiding it represents that they're a woman. To have that violated or taken away is a clear symbol of Egwene's womanhood being taken from her. The Seanchan seem to think of Marath Damane or uncollared channelers as wild animals that need to be tamed. In the moment when Egwene is collared, they say she must be tamed. This Suldam who collars Egwene does not appear to have the tattoos on her face like the others. I wonder if she is a Suldam in training, and perhaps Egwene is her first Damane. Maybe she'll earn the tattoos as she trains Egwene. Anyway, the Seanchan are extremely regimented in their interactions between the classes. Some of the High Blood will not allow others to look at them in the eye, or to even speak to them directly. In some cases, they use a slave called a voice with a capital V, who does all of their talking for them. This man is High Lord Turok's voice, and this woman, Alwyn, is the voice of High Lady Suroth. Or is she now just Lady Suroth, as Turok's voice calls her? I assume Suroth was demoted from the High Blood when she had her nails cut short. You can see in the way their costumes were made that the Seanchan take their voices very seriously. Only Suroth's mouth is visible behind her strange mask, and yet she chooses not to speak most of the time. And Turok and Suroth both wear earpieces, which I believe are a symbolic reminder to the others that the blood don't have to listen to anybody. When Turok does speak, he claims that he never makes mistakes and that he's guided by the light. They really think a lot of themselves, don't they? It's an entire culture of punchable faces. And then there are these poor Damane, young women who are considered so low in the Seanchan hierarchy that they're forced to wear these awful mouth covers because they're literally given no voice. While these pacifier-looking mouthpieces are not in the books, I found them to be a very strong visual symbol of just how repressed these poor young women are. Iron bits or mouth gags were used historically on slaves as a terrible form of dehumanization. As cool as the Seanchan look, I have no sympathy for them or their culture. As far as I'm concerned, they're all evil, which is likely why Ishamael is so interested in them and their army. That said, just like all cultures in the world of the Wheel of Time, there are Seanchan who believe in and follow the light, and there are those who swore their oaths to the shadow. As a quick side note, speaking of oaths, Liandrin mentions to Nynaeve in the Ways that she has somehow broken the 3 Aes Sedai oaths, which should not be possible. This conversation between Ishamael and Suroth implies that Dark Friends and members of the Black Aja swear oaths to the Dark. I wonder if these oaths are as binding as the 3 oaths. Because Turok says he's guided by the light, it implies that he and Suroth are not on the same side. Turok also claims that the whole point of the return is to unite all of the people of the world under their empress to fight the shadow, again implying that Turok, at least, is not a Dark Friend. I found it interesting that Alwyn, Suroth's voice, was kindly asked by Ishamael to leave before he spoke to Suroth about their plans. Alwyn was also not present when Suroth met Liandrin at the Waygate, where they talked about serving the same master. This makes me think that perhaps Alwyn is not a Dark Friend either, and that she doesn't know what Suroth's true plans are. Later, Suroth tells Ishamael that they should just kill Turok, but Ishamael helps her to remember that Turok is a necessary part of his plans. Clearly, Ishi is controlling or manipulating the Seanchan in a big way. Did the Empress actually read the omens to start the return, or was that all Ishamael's influence? Suroth claims that Ishamael needs her armies and leashes, but then Ishamael reminds her that he knows why she swore her oaths to the Shadow. I love this version of Ishamael in the show, where he's always reminding people why they serve the Dark One. It's like the ultimate form of blackmail. He does the same thing to Lanfear later, but we'll get to that. Apparently, Suroth was punished for overtaking a Tuon's mill, which Turok claimed was too far out of the Seanchan reach at the moment. And then we get confirmation that she only did that because Ishamael wanted to go there. Suroth infers that Ishi must have really wanted Loial the Ogier, or maybe Perrin, whom she calls Ishi's pet wolf. But Ishamael says, "My desires are my own." Then Ishamael mentions something called Tarman Gaedon, which is only mentioned once before in the show by Lord Agomar in the Season 1 finale. Tarman Gaedon is the prophesied last battle. Ishamael claims that the last battle will be won right here in Falme, written in the skies above the city. This is not the first time we've heard this. Verin said way back in episode 2 that there are prophecies of the dragon, prophecies that speak of Toman Head and battles in the sky, among other things. What is this about battles in the sky? Why does Ishamael think that the last battle will be won in Falme and it will be written in the skies above the city? What does that even mean? Will there be skywriting in the air by an airplane that says something like, "I have won again, Luz Therin"? When last we saw them, Rand and Moiraine were running away from a cabin somewhere near Kinslayer's Dagger, just outside of Cairhien. We found out that Selene, Rand's friend with benefits, is actually Lanfear, the daughter of the Night and one of the most dangerous of the Forsaken. Moiraine stabbed Lanfear through the chest and slit her throat, and yet she claimed it would barely slow Lanfear down. Sure enough, we see this awesome scene where Lanfear has black flecks in her eyes, and then she gathers a dark power around her and heals herself completely. Even her shirt gets repaired somehow. Now, getting too deep into what this is exactly would be extreme book spoiler territory, but I just want to point out something cool, which is that when the characters learn to channel the one power, they pull the elements from the earth or the air or the water. Even men who do channel a sort of corrupted looking version of the one power pull the power and elements from around them. But when Lanfear channels this mysterious dark power, she literally pulls it from the shadows. How cool is that? I understand it might be confusing to non-book readers why a woman is channeling a corrupted-looking power. I guess we'll just have to keep watching to find out. Also, we've seen that when people are healed by the one power, by the conventional methods established, that they're weak and take time to recover, but not Lanfear. Whatever this power is, it seemed to come from inside of her and from the darkness around her. They don't call the Dark One the Lord of the Grave for nothing. Hopefully we'll learn more about this soon. The Forsaken are awesome and terrifying in the show so far, and I couldn't be happier about it. Lanfear bursts people's heads and sews their mouths shut with just the flick of her wrist, and she whips her horse with a Wonder Woman-like lasso-looking flow of air. She clearly does not care about anybody who stands in her way. Moiraine says it best. Lanfear was famous for two things, her casual cruelty and her mastery of Teleron Riad. Now you, like Rand, might be saying, Tella what now? Teleron Riad is the world of dreams. Lanfear says, well, eventually they'll have to sleep, won't they? Then I'll have them. So, to make things worse for Rand and Moiraine, not only could Lanfear pop up and pop their heads at any moment, but they can't go to sleep because Lanfear will immediately be able to catch them in their dreams. And things that happen in Teleron Riad can affect you in the real world. Moiraine says Lanfear can hurt you just as easily there as here. And if that wasn't enough, we learned that Lanfear and Lews Therin, Rand's past incarnation as the dragon, loved each other before Lews Therin met and married his wife. So it turns out that Lanfear is an extremely jealous ex-girlfriend who loved Rand's previous incarnation 3,000 years ago. Does this help to put into perspective the conversation Selene had with Rand back in episode 2 when she said, what's left to hurt if he still has my whole heart? When I'm with you, I can pretend you're him. I can pretend I'm whole again. You can't imagine what a gift that is. It's so much more than I've had in a very long time. How creepy is that she hooked up with Rand just to remember what it was like to be with his past incarnation. Now we know why she told Rand in episode 3 that if you ever leave me like that again, I will kill you. Yeah, she's crazy. But also apparently she swore her oaths to the Dark One to try and get the dragon back. But the dragon in this age is so young. This is probably what Ishamael or the Dark One are thinking.
Never promise crazy a baby.
The dream world has been shown before in subtle ways in the show, but never outright talked about like this. It's a major part of the books, and I'm so glad they finally introduced it more fully. Ishamael has been using Teleron Riad to manipulate Rand and the others in their dreams since Season 1, and he used the dream world to meet with the Dark Friends at the beginning of Season 2 as well, at least according to the map in the Prime app. This makes me wonder if Rand has actually ever slept with Lanfear in the real world, or if all of these steamy choking scenes happened in dreams. I like that Lanfear is known for her cruelty, and then when Lanfear sees the horse that Moiraine killed and the woman that Moiraine used as bait, Lanfear says, she's more ruthless than I imagined. I think it's great that they're setting up a rivalry and parallels between Moiraine and Lanfear. Moiraine sort of foolishly runs back to Cairhien with Rand, and they make a stop at Moraine's younger sister's house, on Ver Damodred. A fun detail I noticed is that the Damodred house sigil is visible on the door here for a few frames. It's got a tree and crown, and it's even made in the colors of House Damodred, red and green. Details like this make me love how much thought and effort goes into the show. We meet Lord Barthanes, Moraine's nephew. He claims he's going to be marrying the Queen of Cairhien, Queen Galdrian. In the books, it's King Galdrian, but I like this change. I wonder if we'll actually get to see the royal wedding in the show. My guess is that it will be a major part of an upcoming episode. I'm not sure what to think of Barthanes or Anver. I'm suspicious that they might know more than what they're letting on. The way Anver revealed how much she knew about Rand in episode 4, and the way that Barthanes told Rand he looked tired and suggested that he should get some sleep, make me wonder if they might be dark friends. Yes, Rob and Alyssa, if you're watching this, I put that line in especially for you two. We learn that everyone who swears their oaths to the Shadow has been promised things like immortality, power, or control over others. Is it possible that Moraine's family has made a deal with Ishamael in order to regain their political influence in Cairhien? Even the way Anver convinces Moiraine to stick around is suspicious to me. That said, I do think Anver's advice to Moiraine was good, though also very risky. Honestly, I was very concerned in this episode that Moiraine and Rand would not be able to escape from Lanfear, but then I realized the same thing that Moiraine realized at the end. Lanfear doesn't want to kill Rand, she wants Rand for herself. And I also realized that while Lanfear might have originally wanted to kill Moiraine, Ishamael basically tells Lanfear not to. In this wonderful scene between Lanfear and Ishamael in the World of Dreams, we see how Ishamael even has control over someone as cruel and unpredictable as Lanfear. Referring to keeping Moiraine alive, he says, "Desperation opens the mind to more interesting choices." Then he looks at Lanfear and says to her, "As it did for you." Just like with Surath earlier, Ishamael reminds Lanfear why she turned to the Dark One. His evil blackmail continues. The way he asserts his dominance over Lanfear and others in an almost caring way is great. It's such a power move to not only drink wine in a dream with Lanfear, but to take her cup from her and drink it while standing over her. He asks her if she'll betray him, and she half-jokingly says, obviously. Then after Ishi turns away, Lanfear swallows. She tries to hide it, but Ishamael scares her. What a great detail. I love how rational Ishamael's motives seem. A good villain has to be sympathetic and convincing. Ishi is definitely working for me in the show so far. I'm not entirely convinced that Ishamael is even evil. He certainly does evil things, but for what he thinks are good reasons. He says clearly he wants to end suffering. He seems to want the same things that Dana the Darkfriend wanted in Season 1, to break the wheel and end the cycle of suffering. For some reason, he needs the dragon on his side to do it, or so he thinks. As much as Lanfear seems to love the dragon, I think that perhaps Ishamael loves the dragon too. 2, and I genuinely don't think it's a romantic love or sexual attraction, though it very well could be. I think Ishamael genuinely loved Lews Therin Telamon, almost like they were best friends in the Age of Legends before the Dark One showed up. He probably sees the dragon as his equal.
No, you complete me.
Mistress Dovier on Twitter pointed out that Ishamael seems almost caring or loving, or just creepy. He caresses people's faces multiple times in the show, the first time when he reveals his face to Rand, later when he shows the girl the Trolloc. Then when he gives Perrin water in episode 3, he caresses his face. He's gentle with Suroth's hands, and he caresses Lanfear more than once in the dream. If I were in a dream with him, hopefully I'd have the guts to say,
"No touching. No."
A few other quick details to point out in this lore-filled dream scene. Did you notice that when Lanfear transformed from Rand back to herself, that the effect looked the same as when Ishamael disappeared in Rand's dream from episode 2? This just reconfirms my theory to me that Rand is being manipulated in his dreams by both Ishi and Lanfear. Did you notice how Lanfear made the torches light up? Proof that she's the best at manipulating the world of dreams. However, Ishamael does say he's had a lot of time to get better at it too. Lanfear makes herself look like Rand, but somehow Ishamael basically creates Rand from scratch in the dream. And we've seen his skills before when he showed Rand what his life could be like with Egwene in the Two Rivers. I don't understand fully what these statues are, but we've seen them multiple times now, and I talk a lot more about them in my episode 1 Unraveled video if you'd like to know more. I think they must just be statues that remind Ishamael of each of the Forsaken and their seals, but I don't think they're the literal seals that keep the Forsaken trapped, because both Ishi and Lanfear weren't freed until larger seals from different locations were broken. I also thought that maybe these disc statues only existed in the dream world, but then when Ishamael woke up, there was clearly one visible behind him. I love that we got some other Forsaken name drops. Lanfear said, "Moghedien's insane," and Grandal's a vain idiot. I'm so glad these two Forsaken were confirmed. Then she mentions the boys, and that they couldn't execute a plan even if they were under compulsion, which I thought was pretty funny. This not only implies that Moghedien and Grandal are women, but it also tells us that Moiraine might be wrong. Moiraine tells Rand earlier that if Ishamael releases all of the Forsaken at once, that Rand will have no chance of winning the last battle. But Lanfear gives the impression that the Forsaken are not all as unified as Moiraine seems to think. Lanfear doesn't even seem to be totally on board with Ishamael or his plans, and he's supposedly the leader of the Forsaken. Ishamael even says he's the only one who truly believes in the dark. What would happen if Ishamael released all of these extremely powerful and unpredictable chosen at the same time? Perhaps his carefully laid plans would be ruined. Ishamael clearly lies to Lanfear about having captured all of the girls, since he must know at this point that Nynaeve and Elayne escaped. Remember not to take everything or maybe anything Ishamael says too seriously. He is the father of lies after all. Speaking of that, I thought it was odd at first that he said Mat was born his, but after some great online discussion, I think I agree with others who are saying that Ishamael is underestimating Mat, because he just assumes Mat will lean towards joining him because of Mat's poor upbringing and inclination to make poor decisions. One of Mat's greatest strengths in the books is that he himself doesn't even believe he's a hero, and yet whenever push comes to shove, he's there, even against his own internal dialogue, to help his friends and to be the hero. This is perfectly summed up in the very first episode of the show, where Mat faces the terrors of Winternight to go and save his sisters. I also believe that Ishamael is underestimating Perrin. He says Perrin will be more wolf than man, which either implies that the wolves work for the Dark One, or it implies that if Perrin goes full wolf brother like Elias, that he won't care about humans and their problems, just like Elias doesn't seem to care about those things, and so perhaps Ishi thinks Perrin won't be a problem once he joins a wolf pack. But Perrin literally defies that assumption in this episode when he leaves Elias and the wolves behind to go and help his friends. More on that in a second. But one last thing about this scene. It seems that for some reason, Ishamael wants Rand to break. It's interesting that he also wants the wheel to break. Could it be that the only true way to break the wheel is to first break the Dragon Reborn? In the books, we learn that the dragon is one with the land, and the land is one with the dragon. Perhaps if Ishamael can break Rand's spirit and convince Rand to join him, then Ishamael will be able to end all suffering, if that's actually what Ishamael really wants. Remember not to believe his lies. Moving on to Perrin, Elias tells Perrin that his eyes will eventually become permanently golden. He also explains that Perrin's senses will be enhanced. We see an example of this when Perrin sees through the fog at night and realizes that rather than chasing down the caravan with Loial and the Shinarans toward Falm, Elias and the wolves have led him back to Atuan's mill. Elias also tells Perrin that his wife Layla was not a part of his pack, which immediately made me question again whether or not Layla was actually a dark friend. I've talked more about that theory in other Unraveled videos. Perrin and Hopper leave Elias and the pack behind, but Hopper shows Perrin a vision of Uno's rotting corpse in a cage. Perrin literally sniffs the air as he sees the vision, which I thought was a really cool detail. Perrin decides that Uno deserves a proper burial, so he tells Hopper to wait for him, and he goes to the village to get Uno's corpse. But while he's there, he meets an Aiel woman in a cage who calls him Wetlander, and a man named Dane Bornhold, who gives water to the Aiel prisoner. Dane recognizes that Perrin is from the Two Rivers and calls him Two Rivers. And then, the best new character in the show, a dog named Lady, shows up to pat Perrin's arm to warn him that the White Cloaks are in town. He then realizes that even Dane is one of the Children of the Light. Perrin learns from the innkeeper that the Seanchan were actually better than the White Cloaks, as long as everyone just swore their oaths to the Seanchan. They seemed to leave the people alone. He also learned that the previous innkeeper left to follow the caravan back to Falm because they took her granddaughter. I assume her granddaughter could channel the One Power. The innkeeper mentions that some of the White Cloaks are called the Questioners. The first time we heard that term was way back in episode 2 of season 1, when this older White Cloak, who happens to be Dane Bornhold's father, Jeffrem Bornhold, called Eamon Valda a questioner. And what do you know? Eamon Valda shows up in Atuan's mill. Eamon Valda's cloak is a bit different from the other White Cloaks. It has a shepherd's crook looking question mark type symbol intertwined with the sunburst of the Children of the Light. The White Cloaks are basically divided into two groups, the slightly less crazy ones who have a regular sunburst on their cloaks, and the more crazy ones who are called the Hand of the Light, but everyone, even other White Cloaks, call them the Questioners. Just as Eamon Valda seems to notice Perrin watching from behind the window, once again Lady, the goodest dog, runs out of the inn to distract Valda, and I think maybe Dane distracts him as well. Then Dane sort of makes fun of Valda's apparent fear of wolves. I like that Valda has this paranoia because of the wolf attack on his camp back in season 1. Valda basically tells Dane to watch his back because he's just a nepo baby who hides behind his father Jeffrem's authority among the Children of the Light. Perrin decides it's time to get away, but he stops to free the Aiel prisoner who calls herself Aviendha of the Nine Valleys Sept of the Tar Dad Aiel, Far Derais Mai. Imagine filling that name out on a birth certificate. He simply introduces himself as Perrin Aviendha, and she sort of laughs at the simplicity of his name. I'm sure we'll learn more about the meaning behind Aviendha's name in good time, but I will say that she is one of those fierce female Aiel warriors that Errol mentioned in episode 2. We saw another Far Derais Mai, or Maiden of the Spear, in episode 7 of season 1. She was Rand's mother. I love this moment when Perrin tries to protect Aviendha from the White Cloaks, but she just laughs and walks in front of him. Then she veils her face before she begins to fight. Tom mentioned this detail about the Aiel to Matt back in season 1, episode 3. Referring to the Aiel, Tom said, "They're fighters, yes, but they're honor-bound ones. You see, it's only when they're veiled you should worry. That's when you're as good as dead." Aviendha says, "Perrin Aviendha, do you like to dance?" The Aiel call fighting dancing the spears. It's insane what she's able to accomplish without any weapons. It really did feel like a dance to me. I think it's important to point out that she didn't likely kill most of these men. I also like that Perrin picked up the same axe he'd used to pry open her cage, but he used the blunt end of the axe to fight, as if it was a hammer. The last time we saw Perrin fighting was way back in the first episode of season 1. He fought the Trollocs with an axe, and he accidentally killed his wife. Layla was fighting with a hammer. When Aviendha goes to kill Dane, Perrin tells her to stop and reminds her that Dane gave her water. I can't believe the show keeps making me like characters that I hated in the books. Dane sees Perrin's yellow eyes and says, "What are you?" Perrin just ignores it. This was such a great setup for things to come. Later, Aviendha, Perrin, and Hopper are eating by the fire, and Aviendha says a bunch of new terms. Perrin asks her why she's away from the Aiel Waste, which is located way over here to the east, over this mountain range called the Spine of the World. For context, Rand and Moiraine were here at the beginning of this episode in Kinslayer's dagger on the other side of the Spine of the World. They eventually made their way back down to the city of Kyrian in the country of the same name. Currently, Perrin and Aviendha are way over here on the western side of the continent, on Tomon Head, near Falm. The Aiel Waste in the west is called the Waste for good reason. It's a very dry, deserty wasteland with little water. This is why Aviendha calls people on the west side of the Spine of the World wetlanders, because to the Aiel this land is very wet. She even tells Perrin that her water is his. He thinks it's something sexual, but that's just the Aiel way of saying, "I respect you." Water is so scarce in the Aiel Waste that offering it peacefully to someone is a sign of friendship. Aviendha says that only wetlanders call her land the Waste. It is the Threefold Land. The Aiel call it the Threefold Land because they believe they were sent there long ago for 3 reasons. 1. A shaping stone to make us. 2. A testing ground to prove our worth. 3. A punishment for the sin. When Perrin asks what sin they were being punished for, Aviendha says it happened so long ago that nobody remembers. Then she drops a few more new words. She says that she's looking for someone called the Kara Karn, or Chief of Chiefs. Perhaps the Aiel have prophecies of their own and are looking for a new leader. She also tells Perrin that the Aiel follow something called Ji Eto. She says she has To, which basically means she owes Perrin a debt because he saved her life. As Tom said, the Aiel are honor-bound warriors. Ji Eto literally means honor and obligation. She is honor-bound and now obligated to stay with Perrin until she can repay him for saving her life. After a bit of flirting, Perrin tells Aviendha they're going to Falme. Speaking of Falme, Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elayne all end up there by the end of the episode, but in different ways. Liandrin showed her true colors, literally. She now wears black over her red clothing. We get another new term for the first time in the show, the Black Aja. The White Tower denies its existence, but apparently there are some Aes Sedai who have somehow broken their oaths on the Oath Rod and have sworn new oaths to the Dark One. Liandrin proves that this is possible. Apparently the Black Aja can lie, which Liandrin has done more than once this season, and they can use the One Power as a weapon, which Liandrin clearly did to the girls at the end of the previous episode. Apparently they can use a weave of the One Power called Compulsion as well, which we'll discuss more in a bit. I do have some questions about how Liandrin was able to shield all 3 girls and lead them through the ways, along with their horses, without attracting the Black Wind. Like, how did she open the Waygate and get through the ways safely? Was she maintaining a shield on all 3 girls at the same time, or did she tie it off? I'm guessing they originally intended for all of this to be different in Season 1, but because of COVID restrictions during Season 1, they probably chose to simplify some things for the ways that, if I'm honest, they might never fully explain. I get the feeling that they probably just hope we don't notice, similar to how Loial was stabbed by the Shatter Logoth dagger at the end of Season 1. Maybe they'll still explain it, but I feel like they just want us to forget it. Anyway, this is actually more accurate to the books in the way it's portrayed here. My headcanon, to make it work, is just that Liandrin is on an errand for the Dark One, so the Black Wind knows to keep away and let her get along with her business. One other interesting detail from this scene is that Liandrin mentions a king from 1,000 years ago who threatened to burn the White Tower if the Aes Sedai didn't bind themselves to the oaths. Keep that in mind as the show progresses. I loved this scene between Suroth and Liandrin. Though different in many ways, it felt very close to the book, and some of the dialogue was right out of the books. I also liked how Liandrin gave Nynaeve and the girls a bit of a fighting chance. Yes, Liandrin was obligated to follow through with her oaths to the Dark One and to deliver the girls, but that doesn't mean she had to be happy about it, or that she had to give the girls up without a fight. I liked this addition. It's so heartbreaking that the only reason that Egwene was captured is because of that heartbeat decision to weave a shield to protect her friends. She basically got behind and sacrificed herself so that Elayne and Nynaeve could get away. Then Elayne and Nynaeve make their way to Falme with some pretty terrible disguises. I loved how Elayne immediately recognized where they were and noticed that there were soldiers and refugees from many countries and cultures. I also loved how Elayne sort of took charge and told Nynaeve that they couldn't just go in guns blazing to find Egwene, that they would need disguises and to lay low until they could make a plan. I feel bad that they were knocked out yet again, but I consider them lucky that a warder found them and brought them to his Aes Sedai, Rima of the Yellow Aja. And we've already discussed Egwene's capture, so let's move on. Back in Tar Valon, Verin Sedai arrives at the White Tower and does some detective work, along with 2 other Brown sisters who I absolutely loved. Naomi Sedai and Cho Chang, Yasika Sedai, were wonderful new characters. From Ravenclaw to the Brown Aja, it just makes sense. The detectives make a shocking discovery. The Black Aja must exist because Sheriam was manipulated by a weave of compulsion, which should be impossible under the 3 oaths. I just loved how Verin and her Brown sisters did their little nerdy detective work together. I want to see more of this. Obviously, Verin is suspicious of Liandrin. Liandrin's alibi did seem a little too airtight, didn't it? Honestly, for a minute, I thought that Sheriam was caught in a lie, which was a very shocking change to me from the books. But then they revealed that she had forgotten about making a notation because of compulsion, and I was relieved. Sheriam forgot that she wrote in her travel log that the girls had left the tower to go to Elayne's home city of Caemlyn for her brother's birthday party. Of course, all of that was a lie, but Sheriam seems to think it's true, which means she did not lie. There were 2 more new name drops, Queen Morghese, Elayne's mother, and Gawain, Elayne's brother. It was nice to hear that these characters are confirmed to be in the show, but are they going to make me like Gawain the way they've made me like Liandrin and Dane? I really like how the concept of compulsion was introduced through the Brown Aja mystery gang. Something really brilliant that this episode did was it introduced almost every new term at least twice. Words like compulsion, Teleron Riad, Marath Damane, or Suldam were said twice or more to reinforce some of these new terms for viewers. I do find it funny that some people complained of too much exposition. Meanwhile, I've made this whole video to over-explain everything because I never feel like the show explains enough. And finally, Moiraine gives Rand a clear choice after telling him she thinks Lanfear won't kill him. When Rand decides on his own to fall asleep, we get this crazy scene where he's shackled to a 7-spoked wheel. We've been speculating about this scene for months. The wheel is a literal metaphor for the dragon being tied to the Wheel of Time. It's described in the books as having 7 spokes to represent the 7 repeating ages. Also, did you notice the rift in this canyon literally looks like the Aes Sedai symbol? Half white, half black, with a sinuous canyon or line down the middle. But also, did you see what looks like a wall with an opening here? I'll discuss this more later, but I'm guessing this is the blasted lands around here, and this plateau-looking mountaintop is Shaiol Ghul, the true location of the Dark One's prison. The boar is probably right down here. Yes, I think Lanfear is definitely into some freaky stuff. She appears to like shackles and leather and choking.
I'm looking for something that says, Dad likes leather.
Something that says, Leather Daddy?
Oh, is there such a thing?
Did you notice that Lanfear has what look like the Flame of Tar-Valon and Dragon's Fang symbols worked into her headpiece? I'm hopeful that we'll see more of this scene and pick out even more details in the next episode. If you've made it this far, you might be wondering where my episodes 3 and 4 Unraveled videos are, or depending on when you're watching this, they might already be out. But I just decided I wanted to get up to date with the videos coinciding with the episode releases. I promise the episodes 3 and 4 Unraveled videos will come out as soon as I can make them. They're already partially done as of this video release. Thanks for watching, liking, subscribing, and supporting the good causes in the description. Until next time, let the dragon ride again on the winds of Prime.